Night is falling in the Luzon Strait as 10 pairs of castaways are being dropped off in 10 separate locations. One returning player and their loved one. What they don't know is they won't be playing together, they'll be competing against each other.
Survivor Blood vs. Water is the first chapter of the Renaissance era of Survivor, and oh boy does it mark a shift in tone. Whereas in the Dark Era is completely defined by being the worst era in the show's history from having such a long stretch of poorly received seasons, the Renaissance era makes a push in once again increasing Survivor's overall popularity and quality. Plain and simple, Blood vs. Water and the Renaissance era as a whole tries to recreate the magic that works so well in the golden age of the show. In fact, Blood vs. Water's roots actually go back even further to help boost that feeling of nostalgia even further. This is highlighted right off the bat as the returning players of the cast have characters representing all previous eras of the show, including the Dark Age, Golden Age, Post-Classic Era, and even the Old School Era with Tina and Rupert. It's bold and still to this day part of the longest stretch of seasons where Survivor would decide to bring back returning characters to play the game again. In a 6-season span, we would see returning players in one form or another in 5 of those seasons, with Redemption Island, South Pacific, Philippines, Caramoan, and now here with Blood vs. Water, meaning the only season to exclude bringing players back on that list was Survivor One World. And at this point, the Survivor community was getting a sense that we were seeing players brought back far too often. All-Star seasons are supposed to be for a special occasion and celebration type seasons, but when you do them every year, the act of bringing players back loses the magic that made it so special in the first place. So in that sense, it's almost like this season helps fully close that book on the Dark Age era of the show, and with that, Survivor gets back to the quality we all know and love.
39 days, 20 people, 1 Survivor.
Survivor Blood vs. Water dropped September 18th of 2013, and with it, Survivor welcomed in a new era in the show's legacy with the Renaissance era. This era would ultimately run from season 27 all the way until season 32 with Ko Rong, an era that is often defined by being all about the idea of making big moves and advantages. So in other words, this is the big moves era of Survivor. The constant and overarching conversation of needing a Survivor resume to make it to the end of the game is a big reason that initially pushed the big moves meta forward. If you are unaware, the Survivor resume is something that players often talk about being a list of strategic moves that players need to make throughout the game that they can use to make the case as to why they deserve the title of Sole Survivor. Players like Sierra Easton would constantly discuss with other players the concept of needing to make a move is really what kickstarted this era, and I can't believe I've gone this long without mentioning it. She voted out her mom.
11th person voted out of Survivor Blood vs. Water. Laura, that's 5, that's enough. Need to bring me your torch.
So ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Survivor Retrospective, a daily series where we look back at different seasons of Survivor every day leading up to the premiere of Survivor Season 41. If watching videos like this for every season of Survivor sounds interesting to you, then I recommend checking out my playlist that contains every single one of my Survivor Retrospective videos. You don't by any means need to watch every video to understand what we'll be discussing here today, but if you are a completionist and like your stories complete, then you should check it out as we start right at Season 1. I'll place a link in the description containing that playlist. Also, make sure to watch all the way to the end of the video where we'll be revealing my final ranking of the season.
When she lost and I got to hug her, I asked her if she had fun. And she said she did, and for me that was enough.
Obviously, the main selling point of the season that will hook you in right away from the very beginning is the concept of Blood vs. Water, where the Blood vs. Water theme is of course where players will be playing the game with a loved one. It is such an intriguing concept that adds new layers to the already complex social political strategy game that we all know and love. However, people often forget that this season throws so many other twists at you right from the very first episode. Things like Day Zero and Redemption Island often get left unnoticed when first thinking about this season because it all gets overshadowed by the main theme of Blood vs. Water. The only twist that does not land is the first impressions, but we'll discuss that a little later when we dive into the negatives of the season. The Day Zero twist is fun, I guess. I could honestly live without it, but I get the sense that Jeff really likes it with how he introduces the season.
It's not even day 1, but the game has already begun.
Day Zero really doesn't add anything to the game itself, but I think it's funny how production goes out of their way to try to trick the players into thinking they'll be starting the game on the same tribes. And it also helps give us some much needed insight on how close some of these relationships really are, as only a couple of the loved ones would get to eventually play the game together.
We'll now bring in the competitors for today's duel. Rupert.
And of course, Redemption Island would return here for its third and ultimately final iteration before going extinct and never being seen again. I don't think this is that big of a hot take, but I really love Redemption Island here, and I think it works better here than in season 22 and season 23. I actually like it here so much that I wish they had brought it back for San Juan del Sur instead of the hero duels. The added layer of complexity that Redemption Island gives this season really helps carry the early parts of the game as it becomes a main plot point. Without Redemption Island, we wouldn't get to see the final moments of the loved ones saying goodbye to each other, and the amazing concept of Jeff being able to challenge how much they really love each other by giving the option to switch spots. That's what I call creating compelling drama. And I also think it's hilarious how angry the players were able to get Jeff by always throwing away the clue to the hidden immunity idol. We also somehow got the most interesting and compelling version of Candace here during her third Survivor experience.
I wanted somebody to come that, you know, she and I could work together to be.
Somebody you could hate.
Somebody I could hate, like Brad Culpepper.
It's time to talk about my first main negative with this season, and I really hate when the negatives appear in the very first episode as it starts the season off on such a bad point. Survivor Blood vs. Water is able to slowly recover afterwards, but I hate the game mechanic of the first impressions twist. This twist appears on 3 separate occasions and usually only appears as a fake out, where Jeff instructs the tribes to vote someone out of the game, but later goes back on that and gives them an easy helicopter ride to their tribal beach. I don't like that version either, as it separates someone at the very start of the game for doing absolutely nothing wrong. But the very worst iteration of this twist happens this season, as the players are actually voted out and sent right to Redemption Island. I understand why they did this, because the producers want to fill up some spots for Redemption Island right from the start, but this is not fair at all and is almost as bad as the starting twist in Survivor Palau. This creates amazing shock value at the start of the season, but at far too great of a cost.
5 votes for Candace. That is enough. Candace voted out of her tribe.
My only other main gripe with this season was some of the casting choices that were made. I can get by some of the very questionable casting choices that are made this season, as many of them end up actually panning out in the end. But Colton, do we really need to see Colton come back and play Survivor? I take back what I said in my Survivor One World video regarding Colton quitting that season, but he 100% quit the season right here because he is a spoiled brat.
To watch adventure. It doesn't necessarily mean they really should get up off the couch. And I'm now convinced that Colton is the guy who never should have got up off the couch.
The rest of the casting decisions made this season shouldn't be considered negatives, as like I said, 90% of the characters ended up adding something to the season. But the casting is just so questionable, you need to shake your head in confusion. We all thought the cast of Survivor Caramoan was bad, but I specifically remember when first watching this season, my parents asking me who most of these characters even were. We have fan favorites like Rupert and Tyson, but we also have 2 winners and 3 nothing characters from Survivor One World.
My shoulder does still hurt, but it is getting better every day. But the thing is, I'm better than most everybody on my tribe with 1 arm, so I want to win.
I am super pumped that we finally get to talk about the big bad wolf and how Tyson Apostol was able to pull off the win this season. I don't think anyone in their right mind can call Tyson one of the best players of all time, but he is easily in the top 5 for most entertaining Survivor players of all time. And when the most entertaining player comes up on top and is able to make some good moves throughout the game, then there's really nothing else you can ask for. Tyson gives us fun moments with emptying his bag to try and find his idol. He gives us strategic moments with painting the picture that Aris should be considered King Aris. And he gives us physical moments as well with winning the final 2 immunity challenges.
The winner of Survivor Blood vs. Water, Tyson.
Survivor Blood vs. Water makes questionable decisions like some of the casting choices and including the first impressions twist. But all in all, I think there are so many entertaining and fun moments that makes it a must watch. Things like the coconut bandits, rustling feathers, yelling at Brad Culpepper, worried about your dating life because he didn't make the merge, and Tina worried about Rupert's shelter building ability makes this a must-watch season of Survivor. The Blood vs. Water theme adds so many compelling moments, both from an emotional sense, but also strategically as well by giving us the best iteration we would ever see from Redemption Island. We have the true renaissance of Survivor take place here with the big moves era, with some of the most insane tribal councils of all time, with Sierra voting out her mom and the final 6 going to rocks. And this season finishing on such a high note with a satisfying winner as Tyson ends up being the sole survivor.
I've convinced everyone that eating maximum amounts of rice is the proper strategy, and everyone seems to just agree. You know, I'm a 3-time veteran of this game.
Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel with the bell turned on, as I'm posting daily Survivor videos just like this. And please comment down below about what you think about the big moves era of Survivor. My final rating for Survivor Blood vs. Water is at 8.1 out of 10. A tier.